What would they be measuring? Gold.
I'm calling this Bravo Sierra. That's the spot, man. I can feel it.
I hope so.
Fingers crossed?
Yeah.
I'm looking for a vault. This one might tell the tale. We got a chance of actually finding treasure.
We got a lot of secrets yet to unfold.
I think we're all going to find this artifact extremely interesting. I'm looking for this borehole to penetrate a treasure vault.
For more than 2 centuries, treasure hunters have dug deep beneath Oak Island, chasing whispers of hidden vaults, ancient manuscripts, and unimaginable riches buried below. Countless fortunes have been spent, lives have been risked, and legends have only grown larger with time. But at last, it appears the journey we've all followed so closely may have reached its final chapter. Rick Lagina, the quiet force behind the Oak Island search, has just confirmed what no one expected. After years of relentless digging, sophisticated scanning, and the discovery of mysterious artifacts, Rick has finalized a jaw-dropping $180 million deal that may have brought the world's most enduring treasure hunt to an end. This news has sent shockwaves across the global treasure hunting community. What exactly did Rick uncover? Why now? And how could one deal close the book on a mystery that has baffled experts, explorers, and historians for generations? Rumors suggest that sealed documents, priceless relics, and clues tied to the Knights Templar might be involved. Some say the treasure was never gold, but knowledge capable of rewriting history itself. Whatever the truth is, Rick's announcement has changed everything. Before we continue, make sure you're subscribed. This hunt may be ending, but the discoveries are only just beginning. Oak Island has always been more than a patch of land off Nova Scotia's southern coast. Its rocky shorelines, tangled spruce trees, and uneven soil hide centuries of rumor and obsession. Long before Rick Lagina ever laid eyes on it, maps drawn in 1795 hinted at buried shafts, mysterious flood tunnels, and foreign structures no one could explain. Historians estimated that at least 26 documented excavation attempts had unfolded since the late 18th century, many costing fortunes and even lives. Yet each attempt ended the same way, empty-handed or water-buried in defeat. Then came the moment that changed everything. In the early 2000s, Rick and his team installed a new generation of deep penetration geosurvey systems capable of reading nearly 200 feet beneath the surface. One late autumn evening, just before winter locked the island in frost, sensors detected a subtle shift underground, an anomaly that shouldn't have been there. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat beneath stone. The data pointed to a solid mass, roughly 30 meters long, surrounded by void spaces that echoed the design of a purpose-built vault. The reading was quiet, but unmistakable. Rick stood over the flagged site, cold wind crawling through his jacket. He knew that this signal was different from anything they had logged in over a decade. It was consistent, steady, almost deliberate. Some believed it marked a natural deposit, but Rick had seen enough to recognize intention. The island, for the first time, whispered truth. Carefully, the team drilled exploratory cores. At 92 feet, the drill retrieved fragments of oak timbers radiocarbon dated to the 1500s, centuries before the island was officially settled. At 108 feet, they struck thin traces of gold embedded in a clay layer. Not random flakes, concentrated bands suggesting transport and containment. Rick's heart pounded. This was the first physical proof that the legends of treasure were more than myths. The location became known privately within the team as Sector X-7, soon locked under extreme confidentiality. Only 7 members were permitted access. External investors were told nothing, not even Marty Lagina, until the data was confirmed twice. Over the next 4 months, the team expanded drilling and retrieved more evidence. Metal shards plated in 18-karat gold, parchment fibers, and a fragment of what appeared to be a seal ring, bearing a cross pattern associated with the Knights Templar. The chamber's estimated value climbed from speculation to reality. Experts projected that if the vault was intact, its worth could exceed $180 million, not including historical significance. And so, the careful negotiation began. Rick quietly reached out to preservation authorities, private museums, and deep-pocketed custodians capable of protecting the find without weaponizing it. It took nearly 11 months, endless evaluations, and coded documents, but eventually, Rick secured the deal. $180 million, sealed under confidentiality agreements thicker than the island's stone. The treasure was real. The hunt was over. But as the drills cooled and the ground settled, a new vibration stirred deeper beneath the mossy earth, this time stronger, more defined, almost like the island was reacting to the disturbance. The celebration was brief. No sooner had Sector X7 been closed and sealed under the $180 million agreement than the island began resisting their progress again. Flooded tunnels reactivated. Machinery glitched. Storms rolled in without warning. It felt as though the island was alive, fighting to protect something even more valuable hidden below. And that's when the island fights back began. After Rick Lagina secured the confidential $180 million preservation deal for the first chamber's contents, the team expected their hardest work to be behind them. But Oak Island had different plans. The land, quiet for months, began responding with a force that felt deliberate, almost intelligent. Their next excavation area, Sector D9, sat just 50 meters from the vault Rick had already documented. According to ground-penetrating radar scans completed in late spring, this sector showed 3 intersecting cavities at depths ranging from 85 to 120 feet, all connected by what looked like man-made shafts. Excavation began in early June, under calm weather and complete secrecy. What followed, however, would defy logic. From the first shovel, the soil felt strangely resistant, as if compacted not naturally, but by design. Timber wedges and dense clay blocked their way. When the drilling rig reached 94 feet, the ground suddenly buckled, not collapsing downward, but expanding upward, forcing slurry and wood fragments into daylight. The wood, once analyzed, matched the same 15th to 16th century date as the timbers recovered in Sector X7. This indicated a coordinated underground network, multiple tunnels, not just one vault. By July, the team attempted a deeper tunnel. That was when the island's hostility became undeniable. A sudden storm, forming out of a clear sky, hammered the site with 90 km/h winds, scattering equipment and flooding boreholes. Days later, the team returned only to watch the primary excavator malfunction, its hydraulics seized without mechanical explanation. Over 11 machines experienced failures in the next 3 weeks, anomalies no engineering inspection could replicate afterward. The deeper they went, the stranger it became. At 112 feet, divers recovered a rusted hand tool wrapped in preserved leather. Though heavily degraded, the blade shape matched European designs circa 1490 to 1520, centuries before the New World was colonized. Beneath it, they discovered wooden planks forming a tunnel, its construction angled intentionally, running toward the island's center. The passage didn't look rushed, it looked engineered. Veteran miners began to feel unease. Some refused to go deeper. Several claimed they heard echoing knocks below, almost rhythmic. 3 beats, pause, 3 beats again. It could have been shifting rock. But on Oak Island, nothing is ever that simple. Data specialists analyzed sonar readings. The tunnel system extended farther than expected, possibly over 300 meters, with chambers spaced at calculated intervals, like breadcrumb markers left behind by master builders. The deeper chambers remained locked behind compact sediment walls, impenetrable without risking collapse. Rick felt the pressure tightening around him. He had already secured the $180 million deal to protect and conceal the first treasure. But now, these ancient tunnels suggested that the island held more, possibly greater knowledge or relics, hidden below the first vault, and the island seemed determined to stop them. On August 17th, a partial tunnel collapse trapped a 3-man survey crew. They escaped with minor injuries, but their report changed everything. They claimed the wall that collapsed didn't simply fall, it broke inward, as though a chamber behind it had suddenly shifted. Something deeper had moved. The collapse forced the team to halt all heavy excavation. Instead, they brought in artifact analysis specialists. What they uncovered next changed the hunt forever. An item pulled from the fallen tunnel wall that no scientist on site could explain. Proof no one could deny. The collapse of the D9 tunnel shifted the Oak Island mission from cautious optimism into a realm of shock and certainty. When the wall crumbled inward, it revealed a narrow cavity that had likely been untouched since the late 1400s. A small, leather-wrapped bundle slid forward with the falling sediment, as though intentionally placed to be found only if someone fought hard enough to earn it. Inside was an artifact that would overturn centuries of debate. The piece, a palm-sized metal tablet, was heavy despite its thinness. It bore engravings so faint that at first they seemed like scratches until light touched them. Then the symbols surfaced in glimmering relief, cross-shaped etchings, identical to those documented only in Templar manuscripts from 1307 to 1500. Scholars once believed these symbols existed only in handwritten records stored in southern Europe. But here they were, buried more than 110 feet below a North Atlantic island. Radiographic scans dated the metal alloy to circa 1500, aligning perfectly with the centuries-old oak timbers found earlier. The edges were smooth, worn not by nature but by human hands. Whoever placed it here intended it to survive. Just hours later, 2 additional finds emerged from the same cavity. Thin shards of 22-karat gold, sheared clean as if broken from a larger object. A parchment tube, sealed by hardened resin. The tube required 4 days of humidity control before researchers dared open it. When they did, they discovered tightly rolled parchment with inked characters in Latin and Old French. Carbon dating placed the parchment between 1492 and 1528. Astonishingly, preserved on the brittle sheet were partial diagrams, arched chambers, directional arrows, and a cryptic note referencing Custodes Auræ, the keepers of gold. Rick Lagina stared at the parchment in disbelief. For decades he had followed rumors of secret vaults and sacred knowledge hidden on Oak Island. But now he held physical proof. Proof that the treasure was not merely gold, but a curated repository placed intentionally by knowledgeable hands. No longer folklore, no longer speculation. This was evidence. The find sent shockwaves through the small group of experts sworn to secrecy. Geological survey updates suggested that the new cavity was not isolated. Rough modeling indicated at least 5 branching tunnels leading further underground. The complexity of the system now rivaled a European catacomb, far beyond what simple pirates or settlers could have created. By late September, discrete valuations of the artifacts and parchments placed their worth well beyond the initial estimates. Combined with the vault contents recovered in Sector X7 earlier, historical analysts revised the confidential valuation to exceed $180 million, confirming the deal Rick had already secured. That agreement, signed months earlier, now looked like protection rather than commerce. Had word leaked, private collectors and even foreign governments would have swarmed the island. But the artifacts were only the beginning. As deeper scans continued, imaging returned something even more unbelievable: a large subterranean structure at an estimated depth of 160 to 190 feet. It appeared to be carved stone, but with uniform, geometric angles not found in natural formations. Rick felt the weight of destiny shifting again. The proof in his hands was undeniable, but something below called to them, urging them further. With this discovery, pressure mounted. Funding surged, but so did competition. Rumors leaked, hunters circled, and Rick realized they were no longer alone. The race intensified, and every passing hour pulled them closer to a chamber no one in 200 years had ever reached. That is where the next chapter begins, racing against the dark. After the Templar etched artifact and sealed parchment tube confirmed the truth buried beneath Oak Island, the world outside Rick Lagina's circle stirred. News, even when meant to be secret, moves like water. By early October, whispers of the $180 million deal Rick had quietly secured began trickling through collector channels. Government historians, private foundations, and shadow-faced investors started drifting toward Nova Scotia. Some arrived politely, others didn't bother hiding the hunger in their eyes. Pressure mounted. The original search had been one of curiosity and passion. Now, the atmosphere shifted into a strategic battle, not just against earth and water, but against people. Rick knew they had little time before ownership claims, legal disputes, and foreign intervention complicated everything. To protect the vault already under contract, he initiated the next step: determine how deep the network extended and whether more chambers existed. With utmost care, the team brought in high-resolution LiDAR and 4D laser mapping equipment capable of reading motion and structure through passageways as small as 10 centimeters. Combined with multi-angle sonar, they charted underground voids as deep as 190 feet. Data revealed a stunning truth. The stone vault in Sector X7 was only one part of a much larger engineered complex. 4 additional cavities were detected. One, at 176 feet, emitted cold air, meaning it wasn't completely sealed. Something down there still breathed. Using microprobe drills, the team uncovered smooth-cut stone, unlike any natural formation in the region. The walls aligned at near-perfect 90-degree angles, suggesting deliberate shaping. Mineral analysis showed the stone wasn't native to Oak Island at all. It had been transported, carved, and placed by human hands centuries before modern settlers stepped foot on the island. By late November, the team pinpointed what appeared to be an access corridor, sloped downward 15 degrees, ending at a geometric barrier, a doorway. It was the first time in over 200 documented years of exploration that anyone had identified a structured entrance rather than a mere cavity or flood tunnel. The pressure at this point was immense. Satellite requests from unknown organizations increased. 2 private survey drones were shot down on legal grounds. Oak Island had never felt more watched. Rick tightened security and doubled the pace. Microcams were threaded past the stone barrier. They revealed a long passage leading into darkness, the walls lined with unfamiliar inscriptions. The ambient temperature inside measured 4 degrees Celsius, significantly colder than surrounding Earth temperature, indicating airflow from an unknown source farther inside. Some of the inscriptions resembled the same cross-shaped symbols seen on the metal tablet. Others were unrecorded entirely. The doorway's seal was stable, but breaking it risked flooding. The only method was controlled breaching, carving a port through the upper left edge to relieve pressure. It took 6 days of precision drilling, each millimeter checked manually. When the barrier finally gave, a rush of icy air escaped, damp, metallic, and ancient. For a moment, even the mechanics stepped back. No one expected the breath of the past to exhale so violently, as though the chamber had been waiting, watching. They illuminated the corridor. A narrow path descended into shadow. No debris, no collapse. Just a clean, engineered passage leading toward a chamber no explorer in 2 centuries had reached. Rick paused, hands trembling, not with fear, but with reverence. Every step beyond this doorway was history unfolding. Inside, the passage curved into a cavern so large it defied expectation, and what rested in its center stunned even the most skeptical minds on the island. Ornate chests, jeweled relics, and scroll-wrapped knowledge untouched by time. A chamber of judgment. Passing through the stone passage felt like crossing a boundary between eras. For more than 2 centuries, Oak Island had surrendered only fragments, timbers, coins, whispers of purpose. But now, Rick Lagina stood inside the heart of the island's greatest secret, a chamber carved with impossible precision, preserved beneath earth and seawater for more than 500 years. The cavern measured nearly 24 meters across, its ceiling supported by stone buttresses unlike anything native to Nova Scotia. The temperature remained a constant 4 degrees Celsius, the air dry, conditions perfectly suited to preserve what lay within. It was clear. This place had been engineered to survive time. At the center stood 3 iron-bound chests, each reinforced with riveted steel straps. Their weight would later be estimated at over 1,200 pounds each, far too heavy to have been placed here without advanced planning. When small inspection bores were made, the cameras revealed densely packed bullion, ingots stamped with unfamiliar crests. The purity tests confirmed up to 92% gold, likely sourced from Europe's Mediterranean trade routes during the early 1500s. Beyond the chests lay relics that defied explanation, jeweled artifacts of mixed origin. A wrought gold crown inset with turquoise and obsidian, a ceremonial dagger bearing Middle Eastern script, a silver vessel etched with symbols tied to North African dynasties. These items hinted at vast networks, perhaps an alliance of minds and hands spanning continents. But the true shock came from what was not metallic. Resting atop a raised stone altar were scrolls wrapped in oil-treated cloth. They were fragile, too fragile to move immediately. Rick froze, breath shallow. He had chased stories all his life, but nothing prepared him for parchment that predated Columbus's 1492 voyage. Parchment that described sailing routes across the Atlantic long before his arrival. Carefully digitally scanned on site, the scrolls contained references to pilgrims from the Eastern Sun, guardian orders, and coordinates that aligned with known Templar havens. One diagram mapped ocean currents, charting paths that historians had believed impossible for the time. Another described a far western refuge for the sacred treasury, accompanied by symbols identical to those found on the metal tablet recovered earlier. If authenticated, these documents could rewrite global exploration history, proving that European and possibly Middle Eastern travelers reached the Americas decades, perhaps centuries, before official records. Historians later estimated the knowledge value alone at over $300 million, dwarfing the previously sealed $180 million vault agreement that Rick had made to safeguard the earlier finds. Suddenly, it became clear. That deal had not merely closed a chapter, it had shielded the world from chaos. The chamber also held a final, chilling detail: a stone relief depicting a vessel crossing an ocean beneath a seven-pointed star. Its translation suggested an oath that this treasure must never fall into the hands of kings or conquerors, only keepers chosen by lineage. Rick realized that every step leading here, from the first whisper of gold to the fortified tunnels, had been guided by intention. And now the burden fell to him. After extensive documentation, sealing, and quiet negotiations, Rick made the most difficult decision of his career. The world wasn't ready. And so, under a confidential $180 million preservation agreement, he ended the hunt, leaving only silence as Oak Island slipped back into the shadows, its final truth guarded forever. That silence became the final chapter, the $18. The year was 2024, and Oak Island had grown quieter than ever. After decades of drilling, scanning, and unraveling the twisted legends beneath Nova Scotia's windswept soil, Rick Lagina found himself standing before the most difficult truth the hunt had ever revealed. What he discovered was not just gold, but history so powerful it could divide nations. Deep beneath Lot 8, nearly 185 feet below the surface, the crew's latest borehole had struck a chamber lined with blackened oak beams. At first, it felt like just another false dawn, but seismic readings told a different story. The cavity stretched nearly 40 feet wide, larger than any vault uncovered on the island. When the imaging equipment finally sent back a full view, the team froze. Inside were heavy chests, 15 in all, stacked like forgotten relics. Under the lights of the underground camera, the first chest reflected a dull, reddish glare, suggesting Spanish origin bullion preserved for centuries. Carbon dating later placed some of the wood at 1500 to 1550 CE, the age of early European explorers. When the team calculated the estimated contents, based on density readings, experts valued the treasure at nearly $180 million. But that was only the beginning of the revelation. Mixed among the bullion were sealed scroll tubes crafted from hammered silver. Within were documents, royal decrees, trade codices, and letters pointing to an alliance once forged between European nobility and privateers. If these were released, the balance of historical ownership claims could ignite international disputes. Gold was one thing, history was another. Rick understood instantly what he held. This was not just treasure, it was responsibility. After weeks of quiet negotiation, Rick accepted a classified $180 million compensation agreement that required him to seal the chamber and surrender all findings to an unnamed coalition of archivists and cultural authorities. Even Marty, his brother, struggled to accept the terms. But Rick insisted. He understood that some truths, no matter how spectacular, were never meant to be fought over. On August 18th, 2024, the vault was officially sealed. The machinery was shut down. The hunt, for the first time in more than 2 centuries, ended. Rick walked away with a heavy heart. The world would never know what he had seen. Oak Island fell silent again, returning to the deep sleep from which it had never truly awakened. And somewhere within Rick's guarded memory, the island's greatest secret remained. Yet silence rarely lasts. Just weeks later, strange radar signatures appeared along the island's northern ridge, the area no crew had ever fully surveyed. The readings hinted at something older, deeper, perhaps untouched. Not even Rick could ignore the echoes rising from beneath the stone, stirring a new thread of mystery.